Hey everyone. Here playing Invasion Infinity Chess. This is Infinity Chess, this board. The rooks and... Well, yeah, things will move differently as the board is shaped differently. And playing Invasion Chess. So if a piece or pawn gets to the starting squares of these four back, the king, queen, and bishops, it's one game. That's also similar. So it's also similar to siege chess. Siege chess on a standard board would be the king, queen, and bishop squares. And invasion chess is technically the king, queen, and two pawns in front of it squares. But that doesn't really make sense on this board. So if we ever do siege chess, I guess on this board we'll have to. So this could be siege chess. A mixture between siege and invasion, but they're fairly similar variants. All right. I guess that could be the reason. Yeah, my internet's kind of bad. It's been. I think I hear right. And my cat just came down to be comforted, so I'm guessing it was storming where he was trying to sleep. That's usually. I mean, it's different for the variants because like we've technically never played Invasion Infinity Chess, but that's a common rule in openings is don't move like the same piece twice. So like, it would generally be considered if you move a pawn one and then move it two. Oh wait, you can move it two. Wait a minute, you moved it once and then you moved another two squares. Huh. Well, that might not have been a waste of movement. I like it. Generally, for the first at least 10 moves, you try to move one of every different thing. Or not every different thing, but one of, develop as much as possible. Get your both knights out, develop both bishops. I don't think there's castling in this. I mean... So it says, an infinity-shaped board as if we had bent a 18 by 4 size strip and glued the two sides. Here comes the pawn. What are you doing? I guess it would be kind of good to keep those pawns back. I don't know. Oh boy.
Wow.
Better than a queen. Or all right. You do anything for Easter?
Um, I'm going to a potluck,
Nice.
so that's the special thing, I guess.
Hmm.
Wait. Oh, wait, I didn't see. Oh, this board is so funny. Oh.
I didn't. I didn't know which piece was attacking it, and I just had to click every piece to figure out which one was.
Oh, man. Ah. That's what I get for being offensive.
I need to show you some atomic lines sometime because there are some really good like just giving up a knight and to get the queen out and like knowing a few good lines in atomic can like make you just be really good at atomic. Like at least in my I mean, and I think you played enough variants for it to be for you to know like I don't know. Okay, so you got. I just got to worry about your bishop, knight, and pawns, but mainly your bishop and mainly your bishop because I don't really know how that works as well. But it's the okay. Mm. That looks ridiculous. Well then.
game.
Likewise. Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm not really sure about development. Nice. Have you ever heard of the? Might be a little obscure, but I talked about it with one of my friends today. It's a philosophical experiment called the experience machine or the pleasure machine. Have you heard of that?
No, I haven't. What's the pleasure machine?
It's a thought experiment where they ask us to imagine if I can go into more detail, but the short version, like if here's a sentence. Psychologists have figured out a way to stimulate a person's brain to induce pleasurable experiences that the subject could not distinguish from those he would apart from the real world and the machine. He then asked, if given the choice, would we prefer the machine or real life?
And what was the result?
It's not really a result. It's like a kind of just a thought experiment of like is in like is if mental states that are pleasurable, is that the either like the life worth living or desirable, as opposed to real life. If you could hook up to a machine, would that be desirable, I guess. In the reverse, one sec. I'm getting a text from my friend. Oh, okay. I guess now's the time where I start to think about the variant rules. Try to win yet? All right. Let's see. And another way to look at this, that another psychologist brought up, was this. Let me read it real one sec. You wake up in a plain white room. You are seated in a reclining chair with a steel contraption on your head. So the main point is like we're trying to figure out like what would be the moral decision or what would be the most desirable decision for a human to do if you had to make that choice. So given the morality and stuff that we know. You wake up in a plain white room. You are seated in a reclining chair with a steel contraption on your head. A woman in a white coat is standing over you. She says, "The year is 2659, she explains. The life which you are familiar is an experience machine program selected by you some 40 years ago. We at IEM interrupt our clients' programs at 10-year intervals to ensure client satisfaction. Our records indicate that your 3 previous interruptions, you deemed your program satisfactory and chose to continue. As before, if you choose to continue with your program, you will turn to your life as you know it, with no recollection of this interruption. Your friends, loved ones, and projects will all be there, of course. You may choose to terminate your program at this point if you're unsatisfied for any reason. Do you continue with the program or not?" So,
What would you do?
oh yeah, so yeah, I mean, we brought up a lot of different things, like, what would I do? Yeah, I haven't answered it for myself yet. I think in the second scenario, they say if we feel differently about this version of the story compared to the first one, according to the psychologist, it's due to a status quo bias, which a status quo bias is an emotional bias, a preference for the current state of affairs, a current baseline of the status quo. So I do feel better about the second one. I mean, And I feel like I would be more accepting of the second one because if they've said like I've chosen this 3 times, I can terminate it anytime I want. But in the original experiment, there's initial concerns and reasons not to plug in. So the initial concerns would be who would run the machine if everyone's plugged in. It says it's also open to multiple interpretations, saying you could map out the rest of your life in the machine before plugging in, or you could plug in periodically to choose your programming for the next cycle. So the thing to think about is like in real life, whatever that means. You would just be floating in a vat or something like that. So like, if that were to happen to me, you would technically experience me as a vat and like a comatose person, unless you decided to plug into a machine. So it'd be I'm leaving, whatever my real is. I would experience it as real. So I mean, I could experience all of my friends in the vat, but they would experience me in a different world as a someone in a vat, unless they plugged in too. So I don't know. Do you have any thoughts?
Sounds over my head.
Yeah, it's a tough one. I think if aging wasn't a problem, like I could spend 10 years in a vat and I was still like, I could just, I didn't age or something. I think I would do it. Especially if I have the option to get out anytime I want, or I mean, it'd be kind of hard to say that I'd want to at that point if, I'm experiencing the best I could ever experience. Oh, weird. So the king or the queen and bishop diagonals are like really different.
Yeah, it's a mind boggler.
It's also somewhat down to a question of our mental states, which are personally desired. Okay. Well, here's the argument written down in a like mathematical. If experiencing as much pleasure as we can is all that matters to us, then we will experience more pleasure by doing X than by doing Y. We have no reason to do Y rather than X. So that's premise 1. Premise 2. We will experience more pleasure if we plug into the experience machine than if we do not plug into the experience machine. Conclusion. If all that matters to us is that we experience if all that matters to us is that we experience as much pleasure as we can, then we have no reason not to plug into the experience machine. Premise 3, we have reason not to plug in the experiments. Okay, so here's just another part. Premise 3, we have reason not to plug in the experience machine. Conclusion, experience as much pleasure as we can is not all that matters to us. So yeah, it is showing that, like, yeah, is pleasure the only thing that matters? Which pleasure is defined as a desirable mental state. Reasons. Here's some reasons not to plug in. We want to do certain things, not just have the experience of doing them. It's only because we first want to do the actions that we want the experience of doing them. So that's an interesting statement. I don't know if it's true. We want to be a sort of person. Another reason. So we want to be a certain sort. God, that's a tongue twister. Certain sort of person. Someone floating in a tank is an indeterminate blob. So, like, yeah, I'm a comatose person in the tank, and I'd rather not be a comatose person in a tank, regardless of if I'm experiencing a lot. Plugging into the experiment machine limits us to a man-made reality. It limits us to what we can make. Instead of there is no actual contact with any deeper reality, though the experience can be simulated, but it's only what the human mind could think of, instead of maybe not instead of, but in as a I don't know. Well, you protected your rook, so that was probably a better move, I believe. So it says the pleasurable but simulated experience versus reality dilemma has been a staple of science fiction. For example, the short story The Chamber of Life by Green Patton Werderbaker, published in 1929, or the novel Infinite Jest by David Foster Wallace involve a similar formation of the experience machine. In the film, it says that the novel revolves around a film titled Infinite Jest that is lethally pleasurable. The film is so entertaining that once watched, the viewer will desire nothing else but to watch the film over and over. I guess that would be a weird one. If you could like experience a memory of like your happiest memory over and over again, would you do that? Like, would it get dull after a while, or would it, kill the pleasureness of that memory?
Well, I don't think I would want to experience anything over and over again.
Even if it was your
even if
happiest
it's
number.
arguable.
I almost feel like I'd want to experience it at least one time again. I don't know. That's hard to. God. Tough questions. The status quo bias. I haven't read much about that. Preference to the current state of affairs. A large body of evidence shows that the status quo bias frequently affects human decision making. Which is different from psychological inertia, which refers to a lack of an intervention in the current course of affairs. Statistical bias interacts with other non-rational cognitive processes such as loss aversion, existence bias, endowment effect, longevity, mere exposure, and regret avoidance. Experimental evidence for the detection of status quo bias is seen through the use of the reversal test. Vast amount of experimental and field examples exist. Behavior in regard to retirement plans, health, and ethical choices show evidence of the status quo bias. Did not see that one. Ah. Ugh. Oh, wow. Uh-oh. Nice. This will be a close one. So it's those 4 back squares, remember. Just get one of those 4 back squares and king or queen starting on the 2 in front of it. You might get me on this one. Go check first. Oh, a cave. Oh, no. I made the I clicked the wrong button. It was, if I just go back to the white square, if I went further, that would have been a win. You had to stay in the 4 back. To like, I misclicked and that totally just destroyed me, but.
Dang. Dang.
Well, I mean, I don't see a way I could. I don't think I could win after that. I would have won with the back one, but
Yeah.
you can't always click the right
dang.
ones. Yeah, I didn't see a way out of this one. Good game. Nice.
It was really close.
That was. So that was Invasion Infinity Chess. Hope everyone enjoyed it as much as I did. Sorry for the last minute blunder, but I'm not too disappointed. Hope you won't be either.
No. Are you talking to me or are you streaming?